One question that has captured all our mind space for a few months now is when will we have a COVID-19 vaccine? The health minister in India has said that we will have a vaccine by the end of 2020. But recently, when asked again in the parliament, he revised his position and said the first quarter of 2021 is when India should realistically be looking at a vaccine. So on FYI today, we tell you everything that you need to know about a vaccine. How is it developed? Which drug companies are in the race? How soon can we have it? What will it cost? And most importantly, how safe is it going to be? I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. Let's get started with today's show. Let's start by telling you about vaccines first a little bit. Now, vaccines typically require years of research and testing before reaching the clinical or the clinics or your basic place that you go to get vaccines from. But scientists across the world are racing to produce a safe and effective coronavirus vaccine by next year. Work began in January with the deciphering of the gene code for COVID-19 virus. The first vaccine safety trials on humans started in March, but the road remains uncertain. Some trials will fail, others may end up without a clear result, but few may succeed in stimulating the immune system to produce effective antibodies against the virus. At the moment, over 100 companies across the globe are working on the vaccine. But before I tell you more about who's in the race, who's not, and thus how soon can we have it, let's first familiarize ourselves a little with the process of vaccine development. Now, what exactly is the journey that a vaccine takes from a lab to a clinic? First up comes the preclinical testing. That means a scientist tests a new vaccine on cells and then give it to animals such as mice or monkeys to see if it actually produces any immune response. Then comes phase 1 or safety trials. Scientists give the vaccine to a small number of people to test safety and dosage as well as confirm that it stimulates an immune system. Once that has given positive results, they move on to phase 2. That is an expanded trial. Scientists give the vaccine to hundreds of people split into groups such as children, elderly, to see if the vaccine acts differently in any of them. These vaccine trials are further tested for safety and ability to stimulate, again, the immune system, which is the primary focus and the need for the vaccine. Then comes phase 3, which is called the efficacy trial. Now, scientists give this vaccine to thousands of people and wait to see how many become infected compared to with volunteers who've been receiving the placebo all this while. Now, these trials can determine if the vaccine protects against the coronavirus. Also, if the need to be a large enough audience actually reveals evidence relatively or also throws out relatively rare side effects that might be missed in earlier studies. Now, once through all these 3 stages comes the approval. The drug regulators in each country review and trial the results and decide whether to approve the vaccine or not. Now, during a pandemic, a vaccine may receive emergency use authorization as well before getting formal approval. Once a vaccine is licensed, research still continues to monitor people who receive it to make sure it's safe and effective. Now that you know about the method and you understand what stages or the journey of the vaccine, how it looks like, let's tell you which companies are now leading the race. Right now, like I said, there are about 100 different vaccine candidates in different stages of development. We've got a vaccine tracker on the screen for you. In the preclinical stage, there are about 170 plus vaccines. In phase 1, about 10. In phase 2, about 17. In phase 3, about 7 vaccines, and none have got approval so far. So you can actually see 7 vaccines in stage 3, which have closest potential in the near future to actually come out with some results. The FYI team now has dug out the top 3 front runners for you. Let's bring that out now. At number 1 is Moderna. It is an American-based company which has the most promising start so far by working on a new technique which is called a messenger RNA. They have already started to deliver its vaccine to the national health officials in USA, for example. Moderna has set up a record in the drug industry with the speed at which they have developed this vaccine. Number 2 is Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech. Now, they produce antibodies, remember, against the SARS-CoV-2 as well as immune cells called T cells is the way they are working on that respond to the virus. We'll know about what happens to them in about October this year. Next is AstraZeneca. Now, they've been studying on monkeys and found that the vaccine provided them protection. No severe side effects have been found in phase 1 and 2. It did raise antibodies. Phase 2 and 3 trials began in England, India also, for example, in Brazil, South Africa, and in USA. But remember, on this one, on September 6th, global trials were halted to investigate one volunteer who developed a tricky form of inflammation. It's called a transverse myelitis, that is an inflammation of the spinal cord, a major part of the central nervous system. Now, British and Brazilian trials resumed in September. On September 12th, India is still thinking about it. But there is another vaccine that is in the advanced stage, but slightly controversial so far. We're talking about the much talked about Russian vaccine. Now, on 11th of August, Putin announced that the Russian healthcare regulator had approved the vaccine before even it went on to the several phases. Russia later even walked back on this and saying that the approval was conditional only for phase 3 results. Now, sample size of this phase 1, phase 2 was quite small, only about 40 volunteers, imagine that, and received the full vaccine. No one received a placebo. Now, research also not yet has shown anything whether people who receive the vaccines are less likely to become infected or what happens to them next. Phase 3 trials are now on in this, where they have expanded finally this entire trial from 2,000 to about 40,000 volunteers. But if you're now thinking, how long will it take? Why is it taking so long to actually develop a vaccine when the best of the minds in the world are working on it? Let's take a look at how long does it take to actually develop, and how long did it take to develop other notable vaccines, for example. Look at that graph on your screen. Polio, for example, took 7 years. Measles took 9 years. Chickenpox took 34 years. Mumps took 4 years. And HPV took 15 years to develop a vaccine. So compared to that, this is going on a really good pace. The average there, if you see, of a vaccine development is about 10.7 years. When it comes to coronavirus, the pressure to prepare the vaccine has come in every day as the number of cases rise, death rates also climb up, and they're going higher as we speak. But there is real risk, remember, to pushing too hard and too fast. Some drug companies plan to now push testing schedules into human trials rather than spending months testing them on animals first and in labs. That could lead to what is called an immune enhancement, where a person or an animal could receive the vaccine, and who have received a vaccine, in fact, ends up with a more serious disease than those unvaccinated. At the moment, at least, China and Russia are examples of two countries which have approved vaccines without waiting for results in phase 3. And experts say that the rushed approach has some serious risks. The question before the health officials then is escalating these schedules worth the kind of risks that are taking? All right, on that note, let me open it up to my panel. Today, we've got some people and volunteers with us today who have taken these vaccine trials. We also have Dr. Sumit Ray. He's the head of Department for Critical Care Medicine in the Holy Family Hospital. He's the one in the middle of it all, every day seeing patients and saving lives. We also have Dr. Dhruv Chaudhary. He's actually a co-investigator, and he's somebody who's overlooking and overseeing these trials, so his perspective is going to be interesting. We also have Dr. Veer Pushpak Gupta. He's a COVID survivor himself, and he in fact has been talking about the different trends. We are told he's developing a new mechanism for these vaccines as well. So we'll go across to all of them. Let me first begin with Deepak Paliwal. He's a volunteer for the Oxford vaccine. Deepak, tell us your experience with the vaccine so far. Were there any side effects that you received?
Thank you, Sonal. Good morning to all. I think there was no side effect what I experienced. It was quite a smooth journey until now. And I was supposed to get a booster dose on 7th of this month. But then, as you have already told, that there was a delay in the Oxford trial. So they have delayed the booster. Now they have planned it to give that booster dose in the first week of October. which I'm ready for, because these small little difficulties happens in all clinical trials. Clinical trials do get stopped in between if there is an adverse effect. And being from a pharma professional, I don't think so it's a big thing. And as rightly you were saying, I was just going through the pharmacological class, which I've gone in my B Pharm days. This is the actual way, any clinical trial runs, phase 1, 2, 3. I was a part of phase 2,
Okay.
which has 1,000 volunteers, which was a very big number. And have seen the results not only on antibodies, and these results were announced in Lancet in around July 20th. So the first clinical trial which has results released for phase 2 was Oxford and AstraZeneca's trial, and which shows not only developing antibodies but also shown the development of T cells,
Right.
which are very important. So
But hold that thought before I get into T cells and my viewers begin to wonder what we are talking about. Let me simplify it a little. Let me also bring in Sambhav Gupta. He's also a volunteer, but of the Bharat Biotech vaccine. Now, Sambhav, Deepak went into this trial very informed. He's from the sector, so he was well prepared. Was it the same case for you, or were you a little anxious about what's going to happen?
No, I wasn't anxious at all, because actually my maternal uncle has been working in this field for the past 2 decades. So I get to learn a lot from him. So there was no problem, I think. And plus over that, I didn't face any side effects still as yet.
But what prompted you to actually come up and volunteer yourself for the trial? It's a scary business.
No, like everybody is waiting for the vaccine to be launched as soon as possible. Similarly, I was also excited about it. So when I got to know that I can be a part of it, I didn't give it a second thought. So that was a big motivation for me.
And Deepak, also tell me, when you get on and when you volunteer for a vaccine trial, what are some sorts of observations, and how is the company now keeping track on how you're behaving? Like, how is that process taking place?
Sonal, when I started, it was 11th of May. So first, before that, there was a pre-screening, because this was for the healthy volunteers.
Okay.
So they wanted the healthy volunteers to come in, so that if there's any reaction, at least the body can fight it out. So for a week, we were followed up regularly. We were given a e-diary, which we were filling it every day. We are still filling a e-diary, but that's on weekly basis now. They keep on contacting us. They keep on telling that if we have got any symptoms, anything related to the trial, if there's major change in your lifestyle, please let us know. And even after this, whatever there was a gap, when the trial was stopped, they were in regular. They have told us what happened. And I think it's not one patient. They had cases with 2 patients, as of what we have been hearing. They are sending us the press releases before it comes to the press, because finally it's us who...
So you're satisfied with the way things are going on for now, completely, from what I hear from you. Okay, on that note, since we've spoken to people who have been part of this trial, let me bring in somebody who's actually overseeing these trials. We have Dhruv Chaudhary with us. He is a co-investigator and overseeing these trials. Like we said, he is the state nodal officer in Haryana and is from Rohtak at this point in PGI. What exactly have been the few things that you have noticed in your investigation so far? Key points.
You see, when we started this trial, morning everybody, when we started this trial, I think we were also not very sure what we were getting into it. But over a period of time, as Deepak has said, the response was overwhelming. I think initially for us, the first challenge was whom to select, whom not to select. And there was a limited number, and we were getting into an unknown area, because patient safety is the priority.
Absolutely.
So when we recruited it, we saw to it that everything is taken care of. And because sometimes allergic reactions, if they occur, anaphylactic reactions, they happen, it could have put everything topsy-turvy. So we had our place where we have been doing a clinical trial, fully loaded, which can take care of all eventualities. So that was the first part of the preparation, to see that we have all life-saving equipment with us. If somebody has a reaction, we take care of it, because safety is safe.
Right.
Secondly, as he has said it, then we had a pre-screening. After pre-screening, we had excluded nearly 20 to 25% cases who had either diabetes, hypertension, or asthma, because, as he said, it was for the normal volunteer. Third phase of the pre-screening was the lab screening. In this, we took all the samples So some people we picked up diabetics here, they were not aware about it. And then along with it, we looked for the antibody testing so that they do not have a past infection. And along with it, we also did the RT-PCR testing so that we are not taking any patient who is presently asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. So once we are satisfied with that, then we went ahead with the vaccination.
Doc,
When
at
I'm
what
talking in
stage?
terms of
At what stage do you determine the effectiveness of the vaccine? How is that established?
You see, absolutely. You see, there are two components. First is safety, that has been done. Second is in terms of immune responses, because what you were testing were the 3 different doses with the placebo. In the second phase, which we have done the part 1, where the first vaccination which we have completed, there have been 2 particular trial doses, BB 152 and 153, have been used. That means they all are now active ingredient. Placebo has gone away. So we have gone, and for that purpose, what we are looking at is in terms of antibodies. And the antibodies we are looking at present is
that's the key.
a neutralizing antibodies.
Right. So that's
and
the key.
They're not the simple antibodies you are looking at. So we are looking at a neutralizing antibody.
Okay.
And the third, which will require a long-term thing, along will be to follow up these cases to see those who have been vaccinated, have they got any infection or not. I think that will be a long-term thing which will come in the future. We will come to know.
Okay, hold that thought, because I want to bring in Dr. Sumitri now. Doc, a lot is being banged upon on these vaccines, but there is also a lobby which is saying at this point that vaccines are not the only cure at this point. And even the best of the vaccine might not cure you or prevent you completely from the virus. Some saying that it might ensure that you get a milder infection.
Right. The thing with the vaccine is, as all of you are emphasizing, is the safety of it. Then the particular reason I'm going to emphasize a little more on it is that you have to realize it's slightly different from other drug trials. Okay, in drug trials, when we do, it is given to people who already have an illness, and we check, is this drug effective on those patients? In a vaccine, we are looking at the future. These people are not sick. Okay. They may potentially get the infection, and that is why we are giving the vaccine. So they are healthy people who we may cause problems by giving this vaccine, okay, if there are adverse events. So that's the reason why we should not be rushing into it. One, take the appropriate steps, because also one has to realize that if the vaccines get approved, the volumes used, that means the number of people who will get this vaccine is in millions. So even if there's very small percentage has side effects, adverse events, that's a fairly large number. Okay, so we cannot shortcut the vaccine, because we have a problem. COVID is a problem, but we have to also realize that if you see the sero tests, okay, seropositivity, the sero surveys that are being done,
right,
almost 50 to 80 times the number of cases which are picked up by RT-PCR, okay, have had the infection. Nearly a third of the population of Delhi and many other cities have already had the infection. They have developed antibodies, and they didn't even realize that they had.
Right.
So we are mounting a fairly good immune response for most of us. Having said that, there will be a subset of patients who are at high risk, like diabetics, obese patients, elderly, who will require this vaccine in the near future, which will help us, okay, help them not get a severe illness. So it's a balance between these things, because in the process, in the race to kind of get a vaccine, which has become a kind of, in some cases, of nationalistic jingoism or for profit, either of the reasons, we should not end up causing more harm in the subset of patients we give vaccine. We have to be careful about that. I'm just, so these are the
completely valid point. On that note, in fact, let me also bring in Dr. Veer Pushpak Gupta. He, like I said, works for the National Health Service and is also part of the Royal Society of Medicine in London. Now, you're a COVID survivor yourself. This vaccine nationalism, which is much talked about, is also on the minds of everybody. If we talk about another aspect at this point, which is the price, the cost of the vaccine. We know that US at this point has said that it's going to be in double dollars. India is expecting, the government is promising at least that it will be at a much subsidized rate. But what are you picking up in terms of trends sitting where you are?
Good morning to all our viewers, and thank you for having me on NDTV again. I believe that the price ranges from country to country, and it will also range from which company decides to sell the vaccine to the general public. In the United States, I think Moderna is looking at a price of between $20 to $30, and Johnson and Johnson had given price ranges between $18 and $40. So it's quite a range, but it's definitely in double digits. The UK has not come out with any sort of price range, but I think because of the National Health Service, the vaccine will be available to most people on the National Health Service, so it'll be paid for by the government, which is my opinion, I think, but we haven't decided on that yet. But I just want to come back a little bit to the sort of the type of vaccine that we're making. You mentioned it at the start of the program. The mRNA and the adenovirus. These are two very new platforms of vaccines that are being tried out, and that's why we're being able to see results in a much faster way than we used to before. The ways we used to make vaccines before was by introducing either live viruses or inactivated viruses into the body, and then have immune responses of the body take time to develop and then get antibodies in our body. We're using genetic material now of the virus that is being injected into our own cells, which is then producing the spike protein that the virus has. And then our body is developing an antibody response to the spike protein.
That's right.
And the spike protein is important because that's the protein that attaches onto the receptors in the lungs, which are known as the ACE2 receptors. So I think that if these trials go along the way that they're going, and as everybody else mentioned, if they're safe enough, then it'll be a new mechanism of providing vaccines in the future, which can enhance our ability to fight infections down the line for years to come.
That's true. I have limited time on the program. I wish we had more. This is such an interesting subject, really. But I want to give the last word to Dr. Sumit Ray, who's really been talking about what it means for people at this point, and people like you and I. Dr. Ray, at this point, when everybody, especially in the older age group, is somehow just banking on the vaccine. Like just yesterday on FYI, we did an entire show on when will schools reopen. All parents said, let the vaccine come, then we'll open schools. The companies are banking on the vaccine, saying we'll stop work from home, we'll ask people to come back to work once the vaccine is. Are we banking too much on the vaccine, or what is it that we need to be mindful of at this point?
My personal opinion is I think we are banking too much on the vaccine, and the Indian Association of Public Health Specialists and PSM and epidemiologists have said that we have to do the usual public health measures of physical distancing, hand washing, and wearing mask at all public places, and not have large public gatherings. That is the most important at this point of time. And as the vaccine develops, by that time, we will also have more information about seropositivity and how a large percentage of people will actually develop immunity even without the vaccine. Okay. And at that point, probably we will realize which is the subgroup of patients, a subset of patients where we need to give vaccines. I don't think it's a vaccine which is necessary to give it to everybody. The whole population, one. And in the process also, we should not forget that just giving this one vaccine to a huge number of people who may not require it, may take away from the other vaccination programs in the country, which is extremely important, which is being probably ignored. And as you probably know, that the vaccination programs are in many parts failing because of the coronavirus infections itself, in the sense, because of the spread of the infection, the polio vaccine program, etc., are also the number of people being vaccinated is reduced. So this should not add to that. So we have to look at it in its context.
All right, have to look at it and all those very important points being raised over there. Thank you so much for joining us and bringing your perspective on the show. That's all we have for you on FYI today. If you like our program, please write in to us. You can tweet and email all your feedback right to us. If there's a particular issue that you want us to raise on the program, please feel free to do that as well. That's all we have for you. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. I'll see you again tomorrow, 11:30. Goodbye.